Hi, everybody. I just want to say hi and thank you for all the comments, support, and all the subscriptions and things like that. You guys have been great so far. This has been a blast, and I hope to continue to do this in the future. All right, we're back with some more lessons in basic Excel. So this is lesson 3, and this is going to use the sum function, and we'll get into like the SUMIF function as well. So what I have here is a couple tables, and I'm going to fill them in the same way. But this is just Bob's Auto Store, and he's looking at his fourth quarter sales for this year. And what he's going to do is, let's say that his numbers were 25 Fords, let's say 21 Chevys, 10 BMWs, and let's say 12 Mercedes. So what you have here is you can use, if you want to add all these up, there's a couple ways to do it, right? You can go through and individually add them. However, that's not the best way to do it. But the other part is that you can also, once you highlight all of them, you have down here, it'll give you the count, the average, and the sum. So we already know what the sum is. However, we want to have the total sold here. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the font size just a little bit. So what we're going to do is we are going to use a function. So a function is basically a formula. It's built into Excel. There are hundreds and hundreds of functions. So there's a couple ways that you can do it. If you know the function, you can type it in. So the sum one is pretty easy. You can do it a few different ways, but let's talk about one that I use probably the most just because it's simple. You would push the equal key, and then you would just start typing sum. And as you see here, it pops up a little drop down menu, or it's not drop down menu, but a little menu where it has, let's say, 10 or so different things that have sum written in it. So you can do the SUMIF or the sum or sum of products, sum of squares. There's some other ones here that I don't use very often, but maybe I'll put that in a more advanced lesson. So let's say you just want to click sum here, and then you can take your numbers. Now you can either highlight all your numbers, just click and drag down. You can type it in, so if you know what they are, sometimes this is the best way to do it. So we know that C6, and C6 is the first start of this, and then if you put the colon, then it means go through this number. So we'll do C9, which is the last number. Now you can close your parentheses, right? Because the way the formula works, it's always equal whatever your function is. Then it is open parenthesis, whatever your function has. And I can show you, I'll show you here what that kind of means, because there's ways to find out what they are. So you can go through, if you click up here, you can look and it'll tell you what are the factors in this one. So you'll see here it says sum, number 1, number 2, number 3. Now you can do it differently, because you can do it like I've just done it here, which is just select all of these. Now let's say you want to only select a couple of these, so we'll do it this way. We'll do C6, C7, comma, C9. So we're going to skip C8, and what it'll do there is it's going to only sum the numbers that you select. This is only if you're doing selective data. I don't typically use it this way. It's best just to go ahead and do it the colon, C9 all the way through. And as we saw earlier, when we highlighted it, we had the sum down here. Now you can also do, an average. Let's talk about average since we're here. You can do an average as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an average. So this function for average is just, we'll do equal AVE. The function for average is just AVE. And you'll see, again, a number of functions pop up, with average being the one that I'm going to use here, but there are different averages there's different types of averages. You could also do like an average if. So you set a condition, and we'll talk about that here with the SUMIF here in a second. But so when you find average, or you can either just type out average, or you can double click and you'll do your total, or excuse me, you'll put in your range again. So this one is C6 to C9. Now you don't have to be a capital letter on that. Like you could have a lowercase c or a lowercase d or whatever you're trying to sum this over. And then if you just hit enter, it'll also pull that up, and it'll also go ahead and just give you that equation. So you have your average. You could also do a function called count, which is something we saw a second ago. So for that one, you just start spelling out count, and there's a COUNTIF, count blanks. There's some other criteria which aren't really super advanced, but not necessarily what we're going to talk about today. So you can do, just again, you could highlight and do it different ways, but the count here is 4, which we were able to see that earlier down here. So if we just highlight it again, we have average 17, count 4, sum 68. So there's different ways to do all of these things, and these are good ways, the good basic ways just to do these different styles. So like I said, you could do it that way. There's another way you can do it. We're going to just import the same data. So 25 Fords, 21 Chevy, 10 BMWs, and 12 Mercedes. We're going to do the same thing here. So let's talk about if you don't know what your function is, but you have a basic idea. You can come up here to the function bar, and you can start writing in a brief description. So we're going to do, let's see, sum, because we know it's a sum. I'm not sure if we want to do some product or some squares. So what it'll do is it'll pull up the different ones. You can also go through and manually search all of them. As you see here, there is a very long list, A through Z. So there's some statistics, there's some year styles, you name it. Here's some different sum products, sum functions, and some of them were sum products. There's standard deviations and different stylings of those. So you have a variety which are great. VLOOKUP I use probably for, I was my time as a financial manager, and I would look up data. I would use pivot tables and VLOOKUPs every minute. It was pretty consistent. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some of the other functions that are here. Just like I said, there's, different counts and different functions that you have, just depending on what you're looking for. So we're just gonna, we're gonna look up SUMIF. So you can just put in sum and if you want to do it that way. So what it'll also do here is it'll give you what the function criteria are, or conditions, or whatever you want to, however you want to phrase this. But you would type out sum if, and then open parentheses, and the range, so how much you want to look over, or what area of data you want to look over, the criteria. So let's say, in our data here, we wanted to say how many, sum only if we sold more than 20, right? So what would happen here is it would say, oh, hey, you have a 10 and a 12, that's under 20. So we're only going to sum these two Chevy and Ford sales for the year, or for the quarter, and it's going to be 46. So we're going to show that. It also has a sum range. So not every function do you have to put in every single portion of this criteria. However, most of them do require most of it. Let's say you were looking at something and you wanted to get help with this function. They have this great little button here, which is help with this function. So when you click it, it's going to pull up this website. It's going to be the Microsoft support website. And what it's going to do is it's going to have the different formulas that you're clicking on or you need help with, and it'll tell you how to use that formula, which is what we were just looking at a second ago. So let's say for my formula, it says sum if, and they have a different range of data, and they're going to use if it's greater than 5. So as you see here, we have to use a comma after the first one, which is your range, and then the condition set is going to be open quotation, whatever your condition set is, close quotation, and then close parenthesis. So we're going to go ahead and do that on our Excel. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just select it. So if you know which function you want to use, you can just double click it. It'll ask you the range. So this is going to be the same thing as we just typed it in up here, but this will give you a little more detail and a little easier to use. So let's say range. We know which range we want to use. It's going to be H4 or 6 through 9. So we got that. H6 through 9. The criteria. So again, you have to use open quotation. And we're going to say greater than 20. And we don't have to use the sum range on this one. So you'll see this is darked. This is a bold for both range and criteria. The sum is not. If you click down here, it'll tell you what the sum range means in this case. So what we're going to do is going to go ahead. So we put in our formula. Going to go ahead. It actually gives you the result formula right, or answer right here, right? So it knows what it's going to be. We click OK. That makes sense because we expect it. We're only adding in the top two. Again, it makes sense. So you could do average if, same way. We'll put back in the formulas here in just a second, but average if, so we can do that. And we can say average over the range. And then our criteria, we're going to do open parenthesis greater than 20, close parenthesis. And it's going to say the average, right? So if we were to take these two, the average is 23. It agrees with it down here. We will also do the COUNTIF, and we'll do the same thing, COUNTIF. And we'll put some formatting here in a second, but we're just trying to show the data, and the formatting side is preference. So you can do COUNTIF. You can also do COUNTIF blank, but we don't have any blanks. But COUNTIF blank, so we'll do the range. Again, it's going to be this H6 through 9, and the criteria is open quotation greater than 20, close quotation, and hit enter. So it's only going to count those two, right? There's only two that meet this criteria. So if you can, and then you can go in and change the criteria. So there's that. So you could do it this way where, like I said, you just have your sum ifs. Now, one of the quick functions that you have here is alt the equal sign, and what that'll do is it'll auto sum all of these above it. So what we're going to do is just create this same table here and move it over here. And the reason we're going to do that is just as an example to show you. So we're going to get rid of this one. So now it's just going to be a blank. So if you hit alt the equal sign, it'll auto sum everything above that line. Now let's say we're going to do the same thing for Q3. We're going to say there's 21 Fords, 26 Chevy. Let's go with 15 BMW, and let's go with 15. Let's go with 15 Mercedes. You can do the same thing here and do alt enter. Excuse me, alt sum or alt equal, and it'll sum across as well. So what we're going to do is that. The other thing you can do, which is one of the things that is great when you're doing something like this, you can take this, there's a little block here, and you can highlight that little block and drag it down. And what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and copy that formula to the cells below it using the new data. So here it's just the L7, M7, so that, it copies the next set of data. L6, M6, L7, M7, L8, M8, L9, M9. So what it does here is it just adds those up. So we know that that works. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and do the same thing here. So we're going to do alt enter. Alt enter enter. And as you can see here, it's already auto summed all those, and we should have approximately 77, or exactly 77 if we really want to be honest. And it sums them up. Alt equal sign and it's going to show you which ones it wants to sum. So it wants to sum the in column. You put it in, you hit enter. So it's what we expect at 145, right? We know that it's 145. Now you can do, so this is one of the quick keys that is built in, quick functions, quick keys, which is built into Excel. There are others. The best part, and you could also do that with an example. Here's another, fill. Let's say we go 1, enter, 2, enter, 3, enter, 4, enter, right? And we want to keep going down. You can, so if you highlight just the 4, what'll happen is it thinks you just want a 4. If you highlight them all, it's going to just continue to count. So that was just a little basic tutorial or a lesson on the sum functions and SUMIF functions, as well as the fill button, so that you know how to use that a little bit. And as you can see, you can use in different ways. If you need to find where a function is, you can go up here to insert function. You can also type in the text box up here if you know your function, and the format is always equal and whatever it is. So let's say sum, it'll pull up your little drop box or a little box here, and you can click on it. It'll also then tell you the criteria it needs in order for it to work. So you have some different ways to put it in. There are also quick keys